My name is John Quint, and I live here in Missouri. Before I moved here, I lived in Arkansas in the Ozarks, and from the mid-'70s on, I've had an interest in stories about the little people in the Ozarks, in Arkansas, and neighboring regions. It all started when I was living down on a piece of land that people were developing, and there was a pond that had a irrigation pipe, or not an irrigation pipe, but a pipe going into it to fill it with water. And it was our job every day to pump water through this pipe. And one morning, we were following the pipe before we turned the pumps on to make sure there weren't any cracks. And it got to where it went into the pond, and there below, where the water would have been coming out, was a little footprint about like this, is a human footprint. And the man who was with me following the pipes, it was his land. He was an old timer who lived there in Arkansas, and I was just amazed that it'd be an infant footprint in the mud. And he said, "Oh, it's just little people getting a drink of water." It was just something that he was brought up with and would just take it as a matter of course. It wasn't anything real astounding. Well, it was astounding to me because I had never seen anything like this before. And so from that point forward, I've done a lot of studying, a lot of research, and a lot of serendipitous events that happened that kind of led me in the right direction as far as researching all this. I started researching old Native American legends, primarily Cherokees, because I found out that part of Arkansas was settled by Cherokees long before the Trail of Tears. They call it the Old Settlers Band. It became the Arkansas Cherokee Territory in 1817. And the areas around there where I've seen activity like this or heard most of the stories all happen within this little territorial framework. A few years later in the 80s, I was up in Van Buren County, Arkansas, outside the town of Quint. If you go west of there into the mountains around Allred, some old timers told me there was a carving in a rock there. And I found directions. We went out to look for it, and it was a very isolated area. And on the bluff, there was a carving. It was only about this high, and it's about 3 foot off the ground. It was a figure holding a knife and had like a headdress on it. But why is it? It was only 3 foot above the ground, and it was carved into the rock. It wasn't painted on. It was a pictoglyph rather than a petroglyph. I felt like this might have had something to do with it. I researched, getting back to the Cherokees, they had a rich tradition of little people, both in their native lands in the Smoky Mountains and after they moved to Oklahoma, and while they were in Arkansas too. It seemed like not only the stories of the little people, but the experiences with the people came with them. There were other tribes that lived in the Ozark, the Osage and the Quapaw and the Caddo, and they all have stories of little people. In fact, just about every native group here, and I know at least in Europe, have all had stories of little people, and they all seem to have traits in common. I just found it fascinating. Outside of the town of 56, Arkansas, which is near Mountain View in Stone County, there's Blanchard Springs Caverns. It's a well-developed cavern system with trails going through it, but before that was developed as a cavern, the only way you could get into it was through a shaft. You had to lower yourself on a rope to get into it. And in 1955, a gentleman, three men went into the shaft to explore it. They found an old skeleton in there, but the skull was like 6 feet above the rest of the bones up on a ledge. They estimated the age to be 1,100 years old. After looking around, they found a lot of footprints and handprints all around in the mud around there, and on top of a flowstone, which was from the the stalagmite. There was a muddied area on top, and they found a little footprint about the size of an infant on top of that thing. And this is in a cavern where there weren't any lights. I mean, they had to burn reeds if anybody went, but they found no evidence of any burnt reeds around where this was found. And to my knowledge, I think that footprint is still there. It's off the trail. You can't just wander in there and look at it because you have to stay on the trail when you take the tour through the cavern. But the rangers and the people that guide you, the guide to them, they'll verify that that was there. Doing my research on the little people, there's a lot of stories. I'm sure a lot of it's just legend. Some of it's just stories, and some of it may be personal experiences, people of where they come from, how they got there, I'm not sure. It seems like different cultures, different groups that have been through there have their own history and stories about these people, and it seems like they fit within the framework of their culture when they see them. So whether these might be beings that can shift to like a cultural belief or a set of mores like that, or if it's different species, you might say, of beings like that come out. I don't know. I'm not making any judgments. I haven't rendered any kind of a conclusion. I'm still at the stage where I'm collecting stories. And from what I understand, reading about the history of these little people, I'll get back to the Cherokees again, because according to their own legends, when they first came down into the Smoky Mountain area, they encountered a race of beings that lived there who were small and moon-eyed people who could not see in the daytime, but they could see at night, and there was a war between them. And finally there was a truce made, and they coexisted, but they didn't live together in the same areas. They were apart, but according to some stories, these people moved westward and went to what is now Tennessee. The different tribes, they coexisted with these beings because they were just considered part of the landscape, just like they would coexist with deer or bear or other tribes or little people. Who knows, maybe even a Sasquatch. I mean, it wasn't considered something they go try to hunt and capture and display. It was just something that was there. According to what I've read, if a hunter wanted to go in and hunt in a certain land, he would make an offering and ask the little people permission to go in. Or if they were in the woods and they found a knife or something they wanted to take with them, they would ask permission to take it, because knowing that this would be part of their territory. And there's been cases, people that were disrespectful, having rocks thrown at them from nowhere, and you couldn't see who was throwing rocks at them. And also, the later stories, there were people who've had encounters with the little people. They were warned not to talk of it, and if they were disrespectful and spoke of it, usually something bad would happen to them. And otherwise, there was one man who was, when he was 4 years old, this is another Cherokee story. When he was 4 years old, he was kidnapped by the little people. His father went looking for him and couldn't find him for several days, and asked one of the medicine people if where he could find him. And the medicine man told him, well, I'll tell you where you can find him, but when you find him, don't ask him where he was or what happened. So he honored that, and he found his son and brought him home, and he grew to be an adult. And when he got to be an adult, then he told people what had happened when he was young like that. I would think it seems to me that one thing that just about every culture might have in common, despite all their differences, is like stories, legends, and beliefs in another race of beings that we some coexist with or communicate with once in a while. And I think we've lost this in the technological world as we get more developed. They seem to like the wild places. I haven't heard people encountering them in downtown Chicago or anything. But who knows? Maybe they have. But I think it bears a lot more research, but it's research that has to go along with respect and humility too. You know, I'm not trying to capture one, put it in a cage, and show people. But and if I do run across one or have an experience with them, I probably won't even talk about it for at least 7 years. I have a book. It took several years getting the information together, and I published it in the year 2000. It's called Once Upon a Time in Arkansas, and it's stories of encounters with the little people in Arkansas and neighboring regions. And it kind of stories of the research I did, and it's got my references in the back where I got these stories or where they came from. A lot of it was from books, some was from personal interviews, some from internet interviews. And you can write to me, email me at jrquints23@yahoo.com. Or if you look on Amazon, it is listed there, but they took the picture down for some reason. But just look up Once Upon a Time in Arkansas and John Quint, and it should pop up. And if you want to order a book there, you'll get one.